Everybody, welcome back to another daily drop here on the Heel Report, which is part of TarHeal247.com. I am the publisher of TarHeal247.com. I'm Andrew Jones. He is our he is our college basketball analyst and recruiting analyst and Tar Heel analyst, longtime college AAU and high school coach David Sisk. And David, we're here to discuss something that all Carolina fans are talking about right now. As people who cover the team, and me being around the team very closely as I am all the time, we have to be careful in how we approach something like this because we don't have an emotional component. The fans have an emotional component with what's going on with the program right now. I get that. I respect that. I understand it. I think it's healthy. And what we're going to do in this conversation is address that and just talk about it more from how the perspective we see from as close as I am to the team, how you view the team. You're a coach. You know a ton of people in the coaching circles that you've talked with about this program, about some of the things that are going on with it on the court and all that kind of stuff. So what we're going to do is just kind of have a generic conversation about the elephant in the room, and that is Hubert Davis. That's the way the Tar Heels have played. That's the fact that, to your column that you wrote that we ran Monday morning, they're in the same situation in the middle of January they've been 4 of his 5 years. And this is with a team and a roster that nobody expected to be in this position. And I will also say that 3.5 weeks ago, we ran a podcast, you, Jacob, and me, about what a good job Hubert was doing. And up to that point, he was doing a good job. And one of my main points was, look, he's a little bit more flexible in games. He's riding the hot hand, so to speak, a little bit more than he had previously. He wasn't coaching as rigidly as he was. But very quickly, the script has flipped. And things are not going well right now. They're not going well on the court. I don't think he's handling press conferences very well. I don't think he's communicating through us to the fan base the way he needs to. So we're going to hit on all these things in this conversation. So what I want to start with is, from a purely basketball standpoint, disregard the fact that this is Hubert Davis. Don't even mention his name. Just from a basketball standpoint, the 3 or 4 things that you have consistently seen with this team over the last few weeks that are wrong and need fixing but have shown no signs of being fixed are what?
Well, obviously, it's got to start with the defense. And, we had a pretty long conversation before we started here, and you asked me what I felt about it. And you take a defensive group that's being torched every time they step out on the court now for the last 4 games. And it's not necessarily by teams who, when they play other teams on their schedule, who are doing the same thing. I mean, we look at what Stanford did against Duke, what SMU, now they didn't have Boopie Miller, but turned around and did against Clemson, and what Wake Forest has done against these other teams. It seems like when they play North Carolina, it's an outlier, and teams are just can't wait to play them because, that's the one game they can get out of the rut a little bit. But it's more when you're giving up that many points, there's more to it than just, well, they can't guard a really good guard in the ball screen. I see the lack of communication. When I go back, I see more lack of communication than I do anything. And it's been that way. Slow on switches, if they switch at all. Not picking up in transition. There was a big 3 there, and it was off a North Carolina make.
Yeah.
When they just walk it down the trail, they kick it to the trail, and he steps right into one, and they're hanging out in the lane. They have no idea he's there. And the trail's there every play. It's just the matching up, the communication, the urgency, and then they go through these droughts where it just seems like they're chasing all the time and there's no energy. You watch the energy late in the second half, and they were right. Like I said, I think Cal took the foot off the gas. It's a team not used to winning, and all of a sudden they're playing not to lose. So they changed what they were doing too. But you could see North Carolina chase them over ball screens and over handoff specifically, pressuring, not let them get the clean handoff. Compare that to the first half when they just let them go wherever they wanted to go. So you have these stretches And so I think you take all of that, and then one thing there's been a large discussion about the last few days is how Caleb Wilson can go long stretches in a game offensively, not get the ball, or it doesn't go inside. Jeff Goodman made a statement after the Stanford loss. It was after one of these last two on the West Coast, and he said, "I think we fell in love so much with Caleb Wilson and how good he was that we forgot how sketchy the guard play was." And so I think that goes with it. I'm going to be honest with you. I think on my end, and I'll admit it, probably put too much emphasis into the Ohio State win, and Ohio State's played well, but I still think they probably put too much emphasis into that. So there's a lot of things that I see with this team that are worrisome. And like you said, and I wrote about it, they hit this stretch every year where they lose 3-4 games in a row. They play badly. So one of the seasons, they bounced out of it. Hubert's first year, they bounced out of it. The second year and the fourth year, they didn't. So this is the fourth year. Hubert's 1-2 when he hits this Crossroads. Yeah. So which way do they go?
Yeah, they did win 6 in a row starting in mid-February last year, but that was
and played the worst teams you could possibly put together. And the ACC's better this year.
Oh, that's my point.
You're not going to see Skid Row this year out of the ACC the way you did last year.
It's unthinkable a team could win 6 straight in ACC play and none of them be a quad 1 game, and that was the case last year. So the league is much tougher. There are 13 games remaining. We'll get a little bit more into this later. 8 of them are quad 1 games. And really the easiest game in terms of net rating would be at Georgia Tech, and that's a house of horrors for the Tar Heels. Mm-hmm. That team 2 years ago lost. They were 10-0 in the league and went down there and lost. So there ain't no gimme there. They just won at Georgia Tech. They're still won at State. They're still battling. So there are no gimmies, I think, left on the schedule. Even Pitt, as poor as they were this past weekend, the Cable Boys will have them ready when they come to Chapel Hill. There's a whole lot of hate there. So that, and Carolina you'd think would be ready, but today's day and age of college basketball, some of these teams don't really connect one year to the next. So those guys this year, Seth Trimble was the only one that knows what happened 2 years ago when Pitt came to town. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. There are a lot of ways, a lot of directions we can go with this. I'm going to stay with the defense first. It's the obvious thing. It's this thing that most everybody's talked about. It's easy and low-hanging fruit, but there are a lot of nuances to it. And it's not as simplistic as Hubert says when we ask him questions about it. Number one, to your point about Stanford scored more points against North Carolina Wednesday night than it did in home games against Notre Dame and Duke in a 17-day period that surrounded the Carolina game. Okay. Cal scored 54 points in the first half Saturday. 3 days earlier, had 58 for the entire game at home against Duke. These are not just coincidences when you start adding everything up. There's something seriously wrong with them defensively. And here's where I'm going with this. This is in part Hubert's messaging and where it comes from and why. Andy Enfield, the SMU coach in Dallas, I'm sitting 8 feet away from him, said 2.5 weeks ago that he was asked, why'd you guys have so much success scoring against a team that came in number 1 in the country in defensive metrics or whatever? He said, we attacked their switches. Knowing that they're slow switchers. We were talking about this in November, about how they overswitch sometimes, they switch when it wasn't necessary, and that could breed sort of the false mindset about certain things about switching, and they didn't have the edge that they needed. They were attacking those slow switches. Saturday, I'm 5 feet in front of the Cal players in postgame, and I asked them, what did they see in scouting North Carolina, I'm paraphrasing here, that made them think that they could attack and get good looks from the perimeter? They said that they knew if they moved the ball fast, they would get them on the switches. Essentially, they would attack the switches again. And that's why some people thought it made sense for Hubert to go zone, because so many of the perimeter shots were coming from the switches, from the drives, from kickouts, and a zone might nullify some of those issues. Of course, they did go to zone, and they're giving up threes anyway because it looked like they had never played zone defense in their lives before. So I'm asking you, and another part of this is when I've asked Hubert about this twice now and what other people said, He rebuffs it entirely, says, no, it's not the switches. Now, he does point to myriad other problems, which I agree with, and you alluded to some of them a few minutes ago. But you've got the head coach in the league and 2 players in the league right after beating them saying we attacked their switches. And then when Hubert's asked about it 8 minutes later, he refutes that. What do you take from that? And what do you take about the switching? Let's go from Hubert's comments first and then about the switching and why that has been such a problem for this team.
I just wonder if Hubert is one of those guys who just publicly does not want to criticize his players. And their coaches like that. Now, it doesn't come across well because everybody sees it. And it makes it sound, I think, when you do that at times that you're oblivious, which I don't think he is. Yeah. I've told you, because you listen to the press conference. I listened to the press conference after Cal, and I thought that by listening to it, I would have thought North Carolina won. I mean, all he talked about was how they came back in the second half and how they played better. And I'd be like, well, they were down, they rallied and won. You didn't hear the urgency. You didn't hear, the Seth Trimble interview after the game. It's got quite a bit of attention. You didn't hear the urgency. It sounded like Hubert morphed into Seth Trimble's body and did that interview. I didn't hear it from either one of them. I put a tweet up on the board about that press conference with Hubert. Fans are very disturbed about it. And I said, here's a coach with urgency. And I showed the Chris Beard press conference where they said the team didn't play hard. And they asked the player, what do you do to play harder? And he said, I don't know what you can do, if there's anything you can do to get guys to play harder. And Chris Beard interrupted his own player, cut him off in mid-sentence at the press conference and said, yeah, King, put their ass on the bench, which is what we did. And we came back and won. And they've had 2 big wins this week. So it's just the look and the semantics from it and all that. It's just a bad look, and it does not reinforce what the fans want to hear. And I don't think the fans want to hear anything realistic. I think they want to think that the coach is not asleep at the wheel. That yes, there is a problem, and we've got confidence that our head coach has the answers. He may have the answers, but what they're hearing when he's asked, like you said, good questions, direct, point-blank questions, and you hear those answers, and you're like, oh my goodness, So it's not when you're already the fan base and you're on the edge anyway, and you hear that. It doesn't help. If I go to the doctor and I've got a problem, I've got some kind of issue and I'm worried about it, and the doctor says, well, like the old commercial, did you go to medical school? No, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. That's kind of what it feels like in these.
Before we go to the switching and some of those things, let's stay on this, because I think this is something we haven't discussed. I haven't really discussed it much at all. And I'm in every one of these press conferences, and I ask questions, and I often have the first question, and I try to ask questions that I will get answers from. There is no gotcha stuff. Some people think, oh, we're trying to do gotcha questions. And maybe even Hubert might think, why are they harping on some of these things so often? However, they're important questions. An example is this morning in the ACC coaches call, I asked them about the shots they got late in the game. Saturday, when they got into position to steal a win, 3 straight shots from Seth. I love Seth. Seth's a great dude, and I feel for him. And I know the road he's been on. And what you brought up about Seth the other day, I was standing right next to him outside the bus. An outside interview, actually in the daylight outside for post-game in basketball, was a first for me. And he was struggling to get through that interview with us. And I did sense a little bit of Hubert in him. Like, he said what he had to say to try to get out of there, and people didn't like a lot of what he said. I understand that. But Seth took 3 straight shots from the 227 mark to the 105 mark. I when you've got 2 first-round picks and a lottery pick out there, I don't think that's the way it's drawn up. Mm-hmm. So I asked Hubert, did you like the shots? Were they good shots? You look back at the film, were they good shots? His answer wasn't about those shots. It was about, well, they got bad shots earlier in the game as it was. They missed free throws. They missed box outs. He goes through the same litany of stuff, and he doesn't owe me a response. He owes the fans a response, and we are liaisons to the fans because I wrote an article about what Seth said. It's gotten a lot of attention because of what I put in there, and I used his actual quotes. It's his words that have gotten a lot of attention. So we are liaisons to the public. The questions we ask, the answers that we get is what fans then ride on. And as you know, our mission here at Tar Heel 24/7, we talk and write about how they play on the court and field and what they say about it. He's not answering the question. Fans want to know, were those good shots enough? If they weren't, are you going to fix it next time you're in that situation? And he doesn't give people a reason to believe they're not going to. I'm sure some people know that they're working on it. They identified this was a bad shot and have talked to Seth about it. But I think some of that needs to be communicated, especially now, because this past week in California, someone I know that I respect a lot, who's a huge Carolina fan, said to me, what JMU was to Mac Brown in his final year, the West Coast trip was to Hubert Davis. They lost close games, but it looked a lot worse on the court. If you're in person like I was, it looked much, much worse on the court. The defense was terrible. The body language was bad. The spirit wasn't right. A lot of stuff was off, just like that JMU game a couple years ago in football. And then the head coach doesn't come in and say what he needs to say about it. Doesn't answer some of these questions. That is infuriating for fans, and it's frustrating for us because I would like to write more about those shots because I think it's important because they were in position to win a game and didn't. They were 1 for their last 7. They were 6 for their last 20 in a game they came back from a 20-point deficit. What went wrong? Why did they miss so many shots? And why did Caleb Wilson only have a couple of them, which R.L. Bynum asked him about? And Hubert pushed back on that question and said, well, how many free throws? Well, I looked it up. He was 3 for 4 from the free throw line the last 15-44 the Cal game. He attempted 3 shots. One of them was a 3 with 3 seconds left when they were down 5. He had 4 rebounds, 2 offensive, and 1 assist. And Hubert said he's doing all these other things. He's not. He's going through long droughts in the second halves of games that they've lost, and then they blew the 15-point lead against Wake, and they're not finding ways to get him shots. So every time these questions are asked, and these are things fans want to know, they want to have confidence in their coach, he's not giving them the kinds of responses that would breed more confidence. In fact, I think it does the opposite.
There's a lot of places in college basketball that you can get away with it, that it's not followed closely by the fans. Basketball is the 3rd biggest sport behind football and football spring practice. And North Carolina is not that place. It's one of those, your North Carolinas, your Kentuckys, your Indiana's, your Dukes, Kansas. There's a few of them. There's a handful. They hang on every word. And that's the way it is if you're an SEC football coach. If you're at Clemson, Dabo gets torn apart for press conferences. If you're at Florida State, Miami, Big Ten, you're at Notre Dame, you're at Michigan, you're at Penn State, you're at Ohio State. That's what North Carolina basketball is. Fans actually pay attention to the press conferences and what the coach and the players are saying. So, in a lot of places, what's been said in the press conference when the product has not been there has really damaged the coach. And you can kind of see that here. Now, he can right the wrong can be righted, and you can go on a winning streak. Mm-hmm. Now, like I've said, I feel like they're the crossroads, and we may explain that later. The only kickback from that has been from fans who are saying, no, the crossroads has already happened. So the timing of it is the issue. But you're not doing – I think the fans are looking at this and they're saying, like I said, does the coach have the answers, and where's the urgency? And like I said, either there's one or two things. Either he's very, very frustrated and he just does not want to be there in the press conference, or two, he's protecting his players. It's maybe a mix. I can't think of another reason. I just think he's protecting them. I think there's a little bit of an aloofness there, and you're just not going to get answers. I wouldn't expect that you're going to who knows? Maybe Bill Belichick came in and gave him a sit-down one-on-one on how to do press conferences.
Hubert's been like this all along. David,
if he comes out with a hoodie and his neck's when his sleeves are cut off, and he's just, it's – or he's like the Boston Celtics coach you saw the other night. Every question they ask him, illegal screen, illegal screen, illegal screen. That sounds like what you're getting right now.
I would pay big bucks for a press conference like that right now. Trust me. The problem is, and I get what you're saying about protecting and stuff, but I would believe, and I do think there's part of that. Hubert's just not going to throw kids under the bus. But he doesn't throw himself under the bus either. I watched Mick Cronin's presser from Ohio State the other day, and I thought he was going to take a machete to his head. And
you don't want that. You want somewhere in between. You don't want that extreme.
No, you don't want that extreme. And I remember Roy one time after they beat Toledo by like 14 in 2005. It was December 2004. It was the day that we found Saddam in that hole outside of Baghdad, and it was all over the news. And Roy came in the press conference and said, "I feel like climbing into that hole that they found Saddam in," because of the way the team didn't play well that day. That was the way Roy would wear it. Hubert doesn't wear it at all, and that would be okay if you saw change, but it's the same thing. These are the same problems. You got a head coach and two players saying, "This is what we attacked," and he deflects it. You've got the raw numbers right there that I've been riding hard with Caleb Wilson-Strauss. I get that Caleb's a good player and can affect things, and because he's being doubled, other guys are getting opportunities. But this has happened in 3 of the last 4 games that were losses, and in the game that they blew. 2 of them, the opponents pulled away or overcame them during that period. And the other one, Carolina did make the comeback when Caleb wasn't scoring, but when it was crunch time and they got the game into an operational position where they could actually get the win, no screens for them, nothing. It's the same thing. So that's the thing that really concerns a lot of people, that, okay, our coach doesn't, I can see a fan saying, our coach doesn't throw guys in the bus. He doesn't really say a whole lot, but we see nothing changing. So the questions, I think, become more legitimate and more serious when things don't change. The problems keep repeating themselves, and there needs to be some answers, because the fans are the owners of the team. Without them, that's not possible. So I do think that there is an importance to articulate something. And even this morning, he had the opportunity to with several questions and deflected it. And I think Hubert's a wonderful dude. And I've said before, I've gone on record, if he can win big time at North Carolina, he's the right guy to sit at the front table because of the connection to the past, and that he's got Carolina blue blood running through his veins, and you want to try to keep it in the family if you can. But at the same time, there's a standard to live up to, and he knows this. I know for a fact he understands that those banners can hurt you. You've said it before, that laundry can hurt you. And I know that he understands that they need to be at a higher standard. And this past week, and really the past 2 weeks, they've not come close to that. And there's not a great indication defensively that you see anything changing. He did go to zone a little bit. I asked him at Stanford, and he said, well, maybe. And he goes to zone some. Now they had some success with the press the other day. I asked him at Cal, might you implement a little bit more of that earlier in the game after made baskets? And he started to say, well, we do it after free throws. I know. And I talked to him after the presser. I went up to him and said, look, to clarify, I understand you guys do it after made free throws, but that's like a 40% type zone. Not 100% like hair on fire like they'd use when they were, or press rather, when they were coming back. I said, I'm talking after made baskets. I said, when the opponent is in a period where they're hitting a barrage of threes, just change things up. I could sense, even in that, I could sense the frustration with him. Maybe frustration that guys aren't doing what they're supposed to do, and he knows this is the best way for us to play, and they're not doing it. So there's that 2 little parts there that are not connecting. They're not conjoining like this. They're like that. And I think that's a big part of his frustration. And maybe when he doesn't answer questions to the for the fans, questions that we ask, that's where his blockade is. He's not understanding why it's not doing this and it keeps doing this.
Yeah, and the last place a coach wants to be after just a horrible, nightmarish road trip is a bunch of microphones stuck in his face. I get it.
Yeah.
I understand that. But the reason that I didn't do a film review after the Cal game was there's no reason. And as I went back and watched the replay, I already had a good idea about it, but I went back and watched it and I said, there's why put up the same film over and over and over and over? I mean, I could take the Stanford or the SMU or the Wake. I could take any of those and I could just play them and say, I don't have time to do it. Here. They didn't do. Here's another example of not finding a lag on the break. Here's another idea of missing another one of missing a switch or being sacked back in the lane or not recognizing or whatever, getting blown by on a ball screen, what have you. But I think the thing is, you talked about Mick Cronin, and like I said, it needs to be somewhere in there. Mick Cronin takes a lot of hits with his press conference, and you'll hear it over and over, almost like the Hugh Freeze.
Yeah,
he never takes the blame. It's always on the players. It's always, like you said, take the machete to him. He does that after every game. And he's done it for years. He never takes the blame. And you have Hubert Davis never critiquing publicly his players, the exact opposite, but also Hubert Davis never takes the blame either.
Yeah.
So I think you have this persona that here you have the head coach. He's not blaming his players, but he's not taking the blame either. So there's no problem.
Yeah.
And when you're asking,
doing the same thing on the
what about this? And he's saying, and he just deflects it and goes on to something else. Like I said, listening to the Cal press conference after, I would have thought they won a game. So that's the thing. And I think it's disturbing. It's just like, it's okay. There's no problem when clearly there is a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing that goes back to the frustration that I have as someone who covers them, because I want to know as much as I can so I could put stuff out there and kind of be that liaison to the fan base that we strive to be. And when it's wash, rinse, repeat every time they take the floor, that's a problem. And I will give him credit for this. He did go ahead and try the zone the other day, and Justin Pippen hits a three right away. Roy, every once in a while, when they were struggling, closing out on threes, he'd go to his zone, guy would hit a three, and you wouldn't see Roy's touch his zone for another month. And Hubert did go back to it. In fact, two of Pippen's threes were against the zone. I think maybe a 2-3 probably wasn't the right zone. Maybe a 1-2-2 would have made a little bit more sense, but I'm not sure any zone would have mattered, because I wonder right now where the mindset of this team is. When you as a coach watch the team on the floor, and I can tell you I'll give you my thoughts after you share yours, because I'm there in person and I'm texting you guys every once in a while during the game and sharing some of my thoughts and really racking my brain about the best way to present this to the public about what I see. But what are you seeing when you see Stanford just go nuts and score in all kinds of ways, and you see Cal, which is not as gifted as Stanford simply because they don't have an Okori, but they got some nice players, and those nice players played about as well as they can. When you're watching that and North Carolina looks helpless defensively, what are you thinking? What are you thinking is the issue is? And do you think that there is a sincere tweak to change the course of how they're playing?
Man, that's a good question. And we're going to have to peel some layers back on it, because what I was thinking after the Stanford game and then what I saw from Cal were two totally different things. Now, a lot of the same mistakes, but they did it in different ways. Wake Forest, Wake Forest, Stanford, SMU just killed them in the ball screen, the on-ball guard. When, I mean, you could just name your point guards. And I said, okay, maybe what they need to do, we need to go back to the Charles Barkley strategy on when he does, it was TNT, it's ESPN now. I used to love to watch him in the playoffs when he'd make predictions. And the way he'd look at it would be the lineups. And he'd say, okay, this team, I know team A is going to score this many points. So team B, here's what you need to do. If you take away or just try to slow down this guy right here, the rest of them can't beat you. They don't have enough. Or he'd say this, let this guy score as many points as he wants to score and take away the rest of them. And he can't score enough. So I was thinking about, North Carolina scored a lot of points in these games. So what if they would have just said against SMU, all right, Boopy Miller, we'll get you score 60, and he probably would have. We're still going, you can't score enough. Or Wake Forest, or if he would have told Abuka for Stanford, we're going to let you score 60. And we're going to take away everybody else. We're not going to help off. We're just going to stay locked into these guys. You can't score enough by yourself to beat us. And I said, maybe that's the way to go. Stop icing, stop switching, just say, okay, we're going to play regular ball screen coverage here. And if you torch us, you torch us. But the thing I was looking at in these games was these other guys getting their points. Stanford had, I think, two other guys that scored 20. You had two guys scored 28 for Wake Forest. You had another guy for SMU scored 23. Another guy scored 16 or 17. You start adding those up, that's a lot of points. So
Cal had 3 with 19 or more points.
Yeah. So you've got 7 guys in those 3 games that had scored 20 points or more going into Cal. And I'm like, all right, take these other guys away. All right. But then I watched the Cal game and it was totally different. They had guys getting loose all over the place, creating. You had power forwards out there shooting threes, lighting them up. And so you had all these other things. And I'm like, it ain't the balls. That ain't the ball screen in this game. They can't guard any of them.
Yeah.
So do you simplify it as much as you can simplify it and say, okay, we can't communicate. We can't switch. We just got to quit switching. We're just not going to be able to do as many rotations. We need to finagle this down to basketball defense 101 and make it as simple as we can make it and quit trying to switch, quit trying to do all these rotations, quit trying to do all that because it's not working, okay? I don't right now, and it's got to be frustrating for Hubert because this is on the players. Okay, it is. If you watch the lack of effort at times, no communication, and that's been an issue. All of that's them. High school kids should be able to do that. So I understand all of that, and that goes back to the zone part. I thought maybe run zone, but as I watched it, I said the one thing you've got to be able to do in zone defense is communicate. If you have a cutter runs baseline and you're in a 2-3 zone, he starts in the corner. That first forward as he cuts through is going, got cutter, you got him. He cuts through. Now he's under the rim. Center that's in the middle is like, I got him. Cutter, I got him. And as he keeps cutting, he said, we got a cutter behind us. You got him till the next forward. And you are constantly communicating all these cutters. Well, you've got a team that doesn't talk. So you've got a zone defense with no communication, and man, it's just going to be horse shots one after another one. And we saw that. They don't communicate. And then what are you at in the zone? You've got the closeout. You're kind of watching the ball, and then you're slow. And they've already got the shot off before you recognize it, and then you trot out and give a halfway closeout there. That's been the issue. That is on the players. Here's the problem, okay? How many times over the last 5 years have we had this conversation? 4. Okay? And I get it. Okay? I get it. 4 times in 5 years we've had this conversation. So sooner or later, and I hear all this, And Joel Berry had a great text I saw right before we went on. And he's right. He said, the players, before we judge the coaches, the players are not doing this, and this. And I get it, but it's wash, rinse, repeat year after year after year. I'll put it this way. As a school teacher, okay, let's say year one. I'm in the class and I've got kids pulling fire alarms, hanging off the lights. It's anarchy. And you could say, well, he's new. He's got a wild bunch. Everybody in his class ought to be in reform school, okay? And you let it go, all right? And then year two, same thing. Year three, same thing. Sooner or later, the administrator is going to say, this guy's got a classroom management issue. Okay? There's an issue there. He's got a classroom, there's no classroom management. And normally you see that. It will certain teacher, you'll see year after year after year. Okay? Same way here. Okay? Yes, this is things that the players should be able to handle, but we saw it last year. We saw it in year two. We saw it in year one for a big stretch. The third season has been the only outlier. Okay? Now, they can go one of two ways here. It continues and it's going to be a disaster. That's why I'm saying they're at a crossroads. I'm not willing to pitch dirt on him yet. Yeah. Because we got, like you said, we got to be careful what we say. We don't need to say stuff we can't take back. So things we're saying are calculated, but we feel like we're being honest. So I can't say they're not going to win another game, fire him, and then they turn around and win a couple of, several in a row, and they end up turning it around. But because of this, you just don't have confidence that it's going to happen because we've seen this before. We've seen it twice before where it didn't, and we see it again this year, and it just does not breed confidence in a fan base that this can be correct. And it's different players. It's not the same bunch of players every year. I mean, they're just it's a revolving door, different players, same thing.
Well, and to that classroom analogy that you gave, it's as if the class year starts great. Everyone's on the same page. They're all their little charts. They're all getting their gold stars next to their name. Everything's going great. The class is cleaned up. And after a while, it becomes a little bit disheveled. There aren't as many stars getting put up next to people's names. Sometimes kids are tardy to class, aren't turning in their work, that kind of thing. It happens each year with this team. And this year I thought was different because they were a very connected team early in the year. That was 100% legitimate. You saw the way they responded to Elijah Davis getting that basket. I thought that those were all great signs of being connected. But it doesn't take long for a group that hasn't been together, with guys that maybe don't fully have the DNA of the program going through their veins, to just kind of struggle, maybe even collapse, fall apart, whatever the case may be. We see tons of blowouts in college football and college basketball now, maybe more so than we did before, because the groups are new. Sometimes they don't have as much glue there kind of binding them together, which is where the coach comes in. But also, if you're going to blame the players, and I saw what Joel said, and I agree with Joel. Joel played. He understands. Look, ultimately, when Joel played, they say, man, it's up to us. In fact, I was telling somebody last night, I walked through the door at 12:30 a.m. coming back from the West Coast. And I think I was during my layover in Salt Lake City, I was texting with Noah about remembering standing next to Joel Berry in the locker room it was New Year's Eve 2016, the championship year. They lost at Georgia Tech. I flew down there that morning, flew back that night. They had a noon tip-off on New Year's Eve, lost at Georgia Tech, the ACC opener that year. And Joel Berry sat there in front of his locker and said, this is on us. This is totally us. This is unacceptable. We need to be tougher. We need to be tougher. And they were after that. So I get where Joel's coming from, and he understands that's the mindset of players have to have. But if you're not seeing that on a consistent basis, it does come back to the coach. I will reference 2021, Roy's last year, the COVID year. They lost at home to Marquette, got blown out by Marquette at home. And Roy came in the Zoom. They weren't in person for a while that year. Came on the Zoom.
Dawson Garcia game.
it was a Dawson Garcia game. Yeah, the game that basically got Carolina fans, hey, this guy's going to be a great addition next year until he wasn't a great addition. And Carolina, Roy caught a play they didn't run. And Roy was just great about it and said, this will never, ever happen again. Florida State comes in a couple of days later, they beat the snot out of them, right? Not the NCAA tournament, West Lafayette, there's a handful of us in the building. I'm watching. Roy clearly calls a play. It wasn't run. He turns to Steve Robinson, does this, sat down, put his hand in his face. I think that's the moment he retired.
I agree. I was watching a game on television.
Hold on, because he said
clearly, you could see it clearly, him do that, and I said to myself right there, he's done.
Yeah, because he said in his press conference, I wasn't ready to coach this group anymore. He couldn't get that. He said they would never not run a play he coaches ever again. And they did it a second time, and that was it. So where are we here with this with Hubert? With what Joel's saying, it's on the players, but it's the coach has to get the players to do what they're supposed to do. That's his job. That's why they get the big bucks. That's why they're in charge. In all organizations, whether you run a hardware store at the corner or whether you're CEO of a major corporation or everything in between, you've got to get the people under you to do what they're supposed to do to run efficiently and effectively. And while Hubert's had a lot of wonderful success at times at Carolina, and just a few weeks ago, we thought, hey, this club has a chance to really kind of go this way, but they've gone this way. And it's up to him and the players getting ticked off and Seth being an angry leader, which he didn't show the other day, to get them to go. Really, they have to flatline and then go up before they can. I don't think they're going to skyrocket back up. That, to me, is the biggest issue that people have. They don't have the confidence right now that that's going to happen. And last year, the schedule gave them a break. The schedule doesn't give them a break now, David. They have 8 quad 1 games left. I'm going to read them out at the top of my mind. They still have to go, to Virginia this weekend. They got to go to Duke still. They got to go to State. They've got to go to Miami. Those are 4 right there. Nobody would pick them to win any of those games right now, including at State, because State's going to be sky high for that one, right? At home, they have Duke. They have Louisville. They have Clemson. That's kind of tough. The other quad 1 game is at Syracuse, which right now is still a quad 1 game, but would you make them – is winning at Stanford any different, any more a challenge than winning winning at Syracuse any more challenge than winning at Cal? I'm not sure it is. They've got some players that Carolina will struggle guarding. A former Syracuse player had a pretty good game for Cal the other day, and Chris Bell. So I think when you look ahead, you don't have that 6-game stretch like they had last year to get well and tease people into thinking they've really turned it around. You're going to have to do it now against every team that they face from this point on can beat them, and most of them absolutely can beat them. They would be upsets if they lost to a few of them, but I wouldn't think it'd be an upset if they lost to those 7 that I noted. If they lost to them today, I'm not sure any of those would be upsets.
Yeah, so you've got to look at it as the opportunity, because they can win these games. I mean, they've beaten Kentucky. They've beaten Kansas. They can win these games.
Ohio State, which just beat UCLA.
Yeah, Ohio State.
They got Mick Cronin.
I think Ohio State's playing well. I mean, they blew them out. So they can absolutely, they can win these games. And we've said this during the offseason, and that North Carolina had an ACC problem because the league was bad. They needed the league to be competitive and get quad 1 wins, so it would help them with seeding in the NCAA tournament, because it's just so hard when you don't have them. You can't make up any ground, no matter how many games you win. So they have that opportunity. But like you say, it can go either way. I wouldn't personally. I think teams can surprise you. We see so many in every sport where, and I've used the term today, pitch dirt on the team, and you think they're through, and that's when they really rally and they pull off a couple of big wins that nobody's looking for. And this team could possibly do that.
Agree.
We're a little bit different. I said, well, the good news is no matter how bad they are, they won't be as bad as Notre Dame. but you think that could be a more dangerous game than what I do, we're going to see a lot when they play Virginia. Because right now, I do not like their chances going up there. I've watched Virginia play a couple of times now. I watched them play SMU. I've watched them play some games, and I was very, very impressed. Very impressed.
Right.
And you're going up there, that crowd's going to be ready to go. That's going to be tough. The teams that they've lost to here in the last few games, I may be wrong about Stanford, but I think SMU is the only team that's got a sniff to get in the tournament. I don't think Stanford will. I think when everything pans out, you saw what happened against Duke. I think when everything pans out, they're going to lose a lot more games. I don't think they're going to get in. SMU, I saw today right now as a Monday morning, projected as a 6th seed, and they ran North Carolina out of the gym. So you're getting ready to play your better teams. You're going to get Duke twice. You're going to get Virginia. You're going to get these others. So I expect them to take it to Notre Dame Wednesday. If it is a loss, it's disastrous. If it is a tight game, you don't feel a whole lot better. But but the Virginia game to me, and that's one I've had circled for a while, you're going to kind of see, because if they go up there and lay an egg, you're just like, okay, they haven't found it, and now they've got the rest of the schedule.
I think I agree with you, and we're not shoveling dirt on Hubert or the team, but I think we had to come on here. We have an obligation to come on here and speak about the elephant in the room and the situation right now. And we are not throwing dirt on this team or this head coach at all. But I will say this: Notre Dame's a must-win game. And Notre Dame has a couple of dudes who can shoot some threes. Braden Shrewsbury is probably thinking, man, I'm getting 8 that night. And they've got some bigs that I think can present some problems doubling Caleb. Like I thought Cal did a really nice job with pushing him out on some of those doubles. Notre Dame can do that. I don't think they're going to beat Carolina. I think Carolina should take care of it. And I agree with you. I think Carolina should be really sky high and just blow them out of the gym. Although, when was the last time they blew anybody of substance out? It's been a while. The Virginia game, to me, is not a must-win game, but it's a must-compete game. You can't look like you're not competing. You can't look like you're dead in the water in that. And that's a place where Carolina has looked dead in the water a lot in the last 15 years. Now, Tony Bennett's not there anymore, but I would advance that the Ryan Odom version of Virginia might give this kind of Carolina team more trouble than some of the Tony Bennett teams of these recent years would, because of the approach, because of the style, because of the length, and they can shoot threes. I mean, they could beat you all kinds of ways. Yeah. You have to prepare for just a couple of things with Tony. You got to prepare for a lot of different stuff with this team.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And so I want to say this as we come down here toward the end. I wrote an article Sunday that said the Hubert Davis era is at Crossroads, and I want to address that because I feel like a lot of our readers will want me to, because we've had a lot of comments. And there's really nobody disagree. There's nobody out there saying, man, he's in great shape. We didn't get any of that response. The North Carolina fan base, make no mistake about it, they're not happy. And that's an understatement. They're not. The basic blowback that I got was the Crossroads was last year. And now if they don't get this thing turned around, he's done. Yeah. That's what a lot of the fan base, a huge portion of the fan base believe. Now, personally, I don't think he was on the hot seat last year, because some people were saying that, and the whole time they're putting a GM in, Jim Tanner. They're putting a GM in. Hubert was involved in that. So they're trying to get all this organized. So he definitely, in my opinion, was not on any type of hot seat or Crossroads last year. But now I was told that the administration said, look, we want to give Hubert Davis every opportunity to succeed. We want to make sure the dollars and cents are there, that they can put together a good roster. We don't want him to have crumbs and have other programs that are putting a lot more into it and not give him fair opportunities. So this roster is anywhere right, if you believe, some $14 million roster. Okay. But it's definitely 8 digits with a dollar sign in front
If
of it.
it's not 14, it's really close, because I know I'm not going to say it here, but I pretty much know almost to a dollar what each guy gets.
Yeah.
And you're right approaching that neighborhood right there.
Yeah. So the question, so it becomes this: if they don't turn it around, and here's what I was saying, there are going to be serious discussions, in my opinion, among the powers that be. And I'm not one of them, and you're not one of them. I have no influence in this either way. So there's going to be, I think, serious discussions on where they go from here. And so I think in no way am I making a judgment that he ought to be fired. What if I go in and say, well, they got to get rid of him and they win the next 8 in a row?
Yeah.
And I look like the village idiot. So, but they got to turn this ship around.
I think you're right.
They have to turn it around. And right now, I saw projections this morning. They've fallen all the way to 6, the 6th seed. They were up as high as almost to a 3 a couple of weeks ago. They've fallen to a 6. And some of the teams that they're talking about playing, Vanderbilt, some of the others, if it was a 6-3, you're talking about the first weekend, the second game would not be a good matchup for them whatsoever. Because I saw Vanderbilt play Florida Saturday, and their guard plays phenomenal, and they get up and down. And I just don't think some of these teams, and we got a long way to go.
Yeah.
They've got to get this thing turned around, because in my opinion, if they don't get through this first weekend, man, it's going to get dicey. So they've got – that's why I'm saying they can go one way or the other one. They can dig their way out of this, and I think it'll be good. But if it goes the other direction, and it possibly could, if they play like they're playing now, that's the way it's going to go. We're going to be talking a lot more about this in the future.
Yeah. I have talked to some of the powers that be, and they know what I've been told. We know what everybody else is seeing. We see what everybody else is seeing. They're not blind to it. And right now, with the university's power structure shifting and looking well into the future, kind of I call it New Carolina. Sidebarring the Bill Belichick stuff, they didn't suddenly decide to spend money because Belichick won the job. They were already going to spend the money. The difference is they weren't going to pay a coach $10 million, and Belichick came along, and that was the going price. But I guarantee you that if that doesn't work out, they move on. The next coach is in the 10 million range. That's the commitment that they have made. There's a very good possibility that we learn sometime very soon that a new arena will be built. Again, that's cutting one more cord to the past. I do think that there are people that will be prepared if they feel it's necessary, believe it's necessary to move on, that will make that decision. It will be a hard one personally for them, but there's a New Carolina thing going on in Chapel Hill now that is different from the past. It's cutting a cord to the old Carolina way, and they want to create a new Carolina way. So, and it's with other sports too. It's across the board. I think that there's an appetite to win at an extremely high level and do whatever is necessary to do that in this day and age when you can get well overnight. Like you've got Nebraska undefeated. You got Nebraska pulling the Indiana of basketball this year, what Indiana's doing in football. You got Indiana, by the time people watch this podcast, might be national champions in football. Everybody's got to believe now. And if you're North Carolina, you have all these inherent things that are already in your favor. All you got to do is take one more big step forward and boom, maybe you can be that. And I think that belief is there among the power structure. And I think they would be prepared to do what has to be done. Now, I'll also say moving forward, I'm with you. I can see this group turning around because there's so much to like about this roster. There's so much to like about these guys as individuals. And if they play properly together, maybe the Derek Dixon thing at the point is enough to get them through. Maybe they have just bottomed out and they're springing forward. Maybe the comeback the other day was part of them springing forward. We don't know what's going to happen down the road, but I will tell you, it would not surprise me if this team goes on a run and wins some of these games, let's say beats a Duke at home and really positions themselves for a solid seed in the NCAA tournament. That would not surprise me. But you know what also wouldn't shock me? It wouldn't shock me if this team is on the fence and maybe doesn't even get in, because there's so many difficult games ahead for them to win. And if they're going to struggle with the first 5 games of the conference play like they have, this goes back to FSU. They gave up 12 threes to FSU. They've given up 70 threes in the first 5 games of conference play. It's unbelievable how bad they've been defensively. They don't have to improve by 8 or 10%. They got to improve by like 20, 25% to deal with what's coming up on the schedule. If they're able to do that, I could see this team winning enough where, yeah, so people are like, hey, this is Carolina needs to be better than this, but Hubert ended up doing a pretty solid job with this team. And the other thing, too, is this problem with Carolina basketball not living up to the standard started in Roy's last couple of years. He was 32 and 31. And Carolina, this is a crazy stat. I was thinking about this when I was getting steps in the Salt Lake City airport yesterday, because I had to get my steps coming coast to coast on the day I was traveling. Carolina has been to the second round of the NCAA tournament, the Saturday or Sunday games. How many times since 2019? Twice. 22. That was the team that caught lightning in a bottle, and 24. They were a 1 seed. Those are the only 2 times they've played in the Saturday, Sunday, second round game, the NCAA tournament, since 2019. So it's not just a Hubert Davis problem. It's a Carolina basketball problem that's not living up to the standard. The standard I saw on the West Coast this past weekend were some empty seats in both buildings that I used to never see. I was there when Carolina was at Stanford last time. There was a buzz. There was not a great buzz in the building the other day. Duke was out there the same week. Duke was the event. Carolina was, yeah, okay. I had a writer who covers Cal say that they were surprised that the buzz wasn't what he thought it would be with Carolina in the building. And then he said, then I saw Carolina play, and I figured these people must have already seen him play. He says, they're not impressive. They don't wow you. Caleb Wilson wows you. Nothing else wows you about him except the uniform. And I thought that was a pretty interesting thing that he said. And Carolina needs to get back to being Carolina, whether it's Hubert Davis or whoever. It's been a while since they've really been Carolina. And the power structure right now, I think, has the appetite, has the means, and has the intent to do what they can to get Carolina back to where it was and where it should be on a consistent basis.
I'll say this. If there is a Carolina basketball problem, then there is a Hubert Davis problem.
Yeah.
Because Hubert Davis is the head coach. Hubert Davis is the face. Hubert Davis, it's under his guardianship. He's responsible. I was thinking about Duke when you said that. And I just wonder, too, right now, obviously North Carolina's chasing Duke.
100%.
So I wonder, too, the next game after Stanford, Duke just goes in and bludgeons them. They can't score. And I'm sure there was some hangover from the game that they played against North Carolina. But when that happens, I just wonder, too, how much that hurts, because obviously the Blue Devils are widening the gap here. So North Carolina needs to try to do something when they play them at least twice this year to try to say, hey, that's not the case. It's not the way it looks. But, you see them Final Four last year, and they may have had the best roster in the country. They're there again this year. They're top 10. They look to be right now maybe the best team in the ACC. We'll see. And then, once again, North Carolina struggling. So, when I think North Carolina and Duke, I think Alabama, Auburn, college football. And you don't want to all of a sudden become Auburn in this rivalry. So, they've got – not only that, they just can't you just don't need to look up. I mean, there's a ton of in-state kids right now in this 27 class, from C.J. Rosser to King Gibson, that are just Jordan Page. Some of these are just tremendous players. And you don't need to look up and say, okay, these are 5-star kids from the state of North Carolina, but hold on, Duke's offered and we're the second choice.
Yeah.
Duke's more practice. Doesn't need to be that. So, I mean, they've got to draw the line in the sand. And the more they struggle and the more Duke plays, I think it makes it tougher to recruit. I think it makes it harder on the program all the way around, because now it's that you have that widespread difference. And that doesn't help at all.
You know, it's interesting because somebody is probably has already commented on YouTube or on our board right now. Well, Carolina's had more NCAA tournament success in the big picture than Duke for a long time now, but a lot of people don't really realize that. Duke's been to the Final Four, 2015, 22, and then they've been to 3 Final Fours since 2010, played in 1 national title game. Carolina's played in 3 title games, and the 2 that they lost were essentially at the buzzer, right? And then they won the other one. Carolina fans will point to that. They'll point to a lot of those things, but the reality is I was just there in the Bay Area. Duke was the show. That's the way the fans saw it. I will never forget standing on the baseline during warm-ups at Gonzaga in December in 2019. I was talking with a local TV guy in Spokane, and we were talking about Carolina's struggles. And one of the players took the warm-up sweats off or something like that, and you see the uniform pants, and he said, "But you know, it's still that uniform." He said, it's an honor to have that uniform in this building. Last year when they played at Kansas, a fan, I bumped into a fan and they said, asked us media, North Carolina, we talked for like 30 seconds. And he said he paid several, like maybe $800 or something like that to sit at the top of the building, maybe $1,000. I don't remember exactly what it was. He said it was worth it to see those 2 uniforms on the court, opening tip. So Carolina's still got a ton of that, but it doesn't have the same buzz when you go around. And last week in the Bay Area, I was like, wow, talking to people at both places, Carolina was a different entree than Duke was for the people there, as far as the buzz, as far as the interest, as far as the oohs and ahs and everything else. And all of that matters. And you're right. If there's a Carolina basketball problem, it begins with the person who's top of the program.
And the worst thing is apathy. I think as long as the fans are mad, it's okay.
I agree.
Because they care. But if they keep losing games and they just dial out, and I just see people on our board say, I didn't even want to watch a game. Didn't watch it. Turned it off. I'm not going to watch it anymore. Yeah. Once that happens and you start seeing blue seat or Carolina blue seats empty in a Dean Dome, then you're really going to get the issue. And if that happens, then you start losing more games, you start playing this way, that's eventually going to happen. And if there was Hubert Davis, you've got to pull every stop out the rest of the way for that not to be the case.
100%. And that's the beautiful thing about this is that we're having this discussion now, and in 4 weeks we could be talking about, man, Hubert pushed a couple of buttons and they took off like rockets. Because I think that is very possible. Now, they are going to have to be better in some areas than we've seen, and maybe better than some areas I think they can be right now. But you can mask certain weaknesses. Really good coaches can do that. And right now, his challenge is to improve certain areas and mask certain areas. And if he does that, they have so many amazing opportunities in front of them. They could totally change the narrative on this team and on this season and on his tenure. But I think right now, the Crossroads is right. I think your column was spot on. I think the wording is 100%. Fans are emotional. They're going to drop out in a sense, is say he's not the guy sooner than we will because we have a different approach, which is why it's healthy to see what they have to say, hear what they have to say, but also for them to see a different perspective, because there is still time for this thing to not even be a topic. But David, I think you're right. We're at a crossroads right now, and whatever happens in the next 6 weeks, 7 weeks, could determine a whole massive shift in North Carolina's basketball future, or cement Hubert Davis as a guy learning on the spot in his 5th year, which I thought would be the telltale year because it's his roster 100%. He's had enough time to learn the job, and 5 years is plenty to see what he's all about. So he needs to show some stuff too.
And this is his first year he's not had one of Roy Williams' players on his roster. He had R.J. Davis like last year. So, yeah. And look, I think we're being fair about this. I don't think we're being judgmental. I don't think we're being knee-jerk. I don't think we're giving him a pass either, because I can't imagine that he's not having the same conversation in that locker room that we're having here, just to the point where he looks at them and he says, boys, talking to his staff and his players, every eyeballs and ears in that locker room, and saying, we got to get this thing turned around.
And sport is the most beautiful, amazing drama that we have. We see it all the time. The unexpected. We love stories of turnaround, and they may give us that story to write. 22 did it. 22 was dead in the water at this time 4 years ago, and I wrote about this in my column after the game. And some people, maybe I should have done a better job with the column, but I pointed out that they went to Miami and Wake that week and lost by a combined 50 points. The day after Wake, Dawson Garcia quits and goes home. And the media narrative in Winston-Salem was, holy hell, this thing is a disaster. This is not working. Carolina stepped in it. 2 months later, they were the darlings of college basketball. Mm-hmm. So it can happen. Now, I understand, and I'm not comparing this team to that team. I'm just comparing the at this moment scenario. That team had some dogs. This team, I think, has some dogs too, but they've not been very dog-like of late. And
Brady Manick wouldn't have called it a bump in the road.
No. Brady Manick said to us at one point, I didn't come here for this. We haven't heard that from anybody right now. And the one dog they do have, they need to feed him. And he goes through droughts, and it's inexcusable to not run him off 11,000 screen. There were 11,000 people in the building at Haas Pavilion. He should have been run off every one of them to get open during that stretch. Every one of them. But they didn't do it, and that falls on the leader. Any last thoughts, David?
Well, I think we've emptied the bucket here. Yeah.
All right. I agree. We want your thoughts. Don't go all emotional. He's done. He's toast. He's the worst. Don't do that. This is a crossroads. There still is an opportunity, because if you put some out there and say he's toast and it's over, what if they do go on a run? You can't pull that comment back. Try to be logical. Try to be rational about this when you think it through, because if you're watching this still, that means you are a passionate, diehard Tar Heel fan. And most passionate Tar Heel diehard Tar Heel fans want them to win now. Most are not rooting, I want to go all to hell so we can go get a new guy in here finally. No, maybe this is your guy. He's just going through part of his process. We don't know. We'll know in a couple of months, one way or the other. Let us know what you guys think. How much grace do you still have in you? And if you're way too emotional, you've already made your mind up and you're just pissed off at the whole thing, express that as well, but try to be discreet. We don't really want this thing to be personal. This is basketball, guys. This is nothing more than basketball. I know it's the Church of Carolina basketball, but it's basketball. Hubert Davis has given his life to this program. He's been around the program. Nobody loves it and bleeds it more than him. So try to do so with respect. That would be highly appreciated. He's David. I'm AJ. Make sure you like this video. Share it with your Tar Heel friends. Let them know we're here. Going over to Tar Heel 24/7. Ton of football portal information that we got behind the paywall because it's VIP. You got to pay for the trip out to California. This is what we do. McDonald's doesn't give you free food. We're not giving everything away for free as well, but it's really a drop in the bucket, and you can be a Tar Heel insider too. We appreciate you guys stopping by.